Right now, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a woman is finishing an overnight shift stocking shelves at Walmart. She's worked full time for 3 years straight. Last year, she earned $15,080. That's $880 below the federal poverty line for one person. She has a job. She works every scheduled hour. And by the government's own definition, she is still poor. Most people assume a full time job keeps you out of poverty. That stopped being true years ago, and almost nobody noticed the moment it happened. So, what actually changes, dollar by dollar, as someone climbs from that hole all the way up through every level of wealth in America? It isn't just bigger numbers. Money changes jobs as you rise. It buys something different at every level. The level you're on right now decides what your money is even for. That's what this video is about. Without understanding that shift, you'll keep judging your own progress by a scale built for someone standing on a different rung. My name is Alex. If you've ever run the numbers on your own paycheck and felt like they should add up better than they do, stay with me. The problem was never your math. I'm going to show you the real dollar figures at every level of American wealth and the exact point where money stops being about survival. Once you see that shift, you'll stop measuring your own life against numbers that were never built for you. That gap between her paycheck and the poverty line didn't happen by accident. It traces back to one number Congress hasn't touched since 2009. The working poor, $0 or negative. Here's a number that should bother you. $7.25. That's still the federal minimum wage in this country, and it hasn't moved since 2009. Not adjusted, not raised, not touched. Everything else has gotten more expensive since then. That number just sat there. Meet Dana Whitfield. She's 34, and she works the overnight shift at a Target distribution center just outside Tulsa, Oklahoma. Her shift starts at 11 at night and ends at 7 in the morning. She scans pallets, loads trucks, and drives home as the sun comes up. Past a Kroger that's already open. Past a Quick Trip that never closes. She's been doing this for 3 years. Dana works full-time, 40 hours a week, every week. Let's run her numbers because the math here actually matters. 40 hours a week times 52 weeks a year gives you $2,080. Multiply that by $7.25, and you get $15,080. That's her gross income for the entire year, before taxes. Now here's where it gets strange. The federal poverty line for a single person this year sits at $15,960. Dana works full-time, every scheduled hour, and she still lands $880 below the official poverty line. She's not falling behind because she made a bad decision somewhere. She's falling behind because the number attached to her labor stopped moving 15 years ago, and the cost of everything around her didn't. Now you're probably thinking, doesn't a job like that come with government help? And yeah, some of it does. If Dana had a family of 4 to support, the gross income cutoff for food assistance this year is $3,483 a month. Cross that line, even by a little, and the help disappears. So the system isn't designed to lift her out. It's designed to keep her exactly at the edge of it. Let's talk about her car for a second, because this is where the whole thing becomes fragile instead of just tight. Dana drives a 2012 Honda Civic with 170,000 miles on it. It's paid off, which is the only reason she can afford to own it. But a transmission rebuild on that car runs about $2,800. That's almost 3 months of rent. If that transmission goes, she doesn't just lose a car. She loses the way she gets to work, which means she loses the job, which means she loses the income that was already $880 short of the poverty line. For a little perspective on scale, a Hermes Birkin 30 handbag in Togo leather retails for around $11,000. That's nearly a third of Dana's entire yearly income, spent on one bag by someone who probably owns several. 2 completely different economies exist in this country at the exact same time, and most people only ever see one of them. So Dana's day isn't really about ambition or motivation. It's about sequencing. Get to the library before it closes so she can use the Wi-Fi to check her schedule. Time the grocery trip around payday. Keep that Civic running 1 more month. Every decision gets filtered through the same question. What happens if something breaks? And something usually does. The strange part is that Dana isn't unlucky. She's doing everything you'd tell someone to do. Show up, work hard, don't miss a shift. The math still doesn't close, which raises a real question worth sitting with for a second. If full-time work at the federal minimum wage guarantees you'll live below the poverty line, what exactly was that number supposed to protect people from in the first place? Move up one level of income, and that question doesn't disappear. It just gets quieter. Middle class comfort, $50,000 to $250,000. Quiet dread. That's the two-word review from Dana. Keep her hours, keep the Wi-Fi library trip, keep the transmission alive one more month. Move up the income ladder from there. And the fear doesn't go away. It just gets a nicer car to sit in. Meet Renata and Josh Kaminsky. She's a nurse at a hospital in Columbus, Ohio. He manages logistics for a regional distribution company. Together, they bring home a little over $84,000 a year, which puts them almost exactly at the current U.S. median household income. Half the country earns more than that. Half earns less. Renata and Josh are, statistically, the most average household in America. And on paper, their life looks good. They own a paid-off 2021 Toyota Camry SE. Josh still has a loan on his 2019 Honda CR-V, but it's manageable. They take a real vacation once a year, usually Universal Orlando with their two kids. Josh has been eyeing a Ford Bronco Outer Banks trim to replace the CR-V once it's paid down. And honestly, that's not a crazy stretch for them. This is the tier where you get to want something and actually plan for it. So here's a fair question. If this is the median, the exact middle of the American income distribution, why does it still feel tight? Why does a household bringing in more than $80,000 a year still flinch at an unexpected bill? Here's the mechanism. Roughly 60% of Americans can't cover a surprise $1,000 expense out of savings. Not because they're careless. Because every dollar coming in already has a job assigned to it before it lands. The mortgage, the 401k contribution that gets the employer match, health insurance premiums, 2 car payments, even a modest one. There's no dollar sitting around unassigned, waiting to absorb a surprise. I'm not saying Renata and Josh are bad with money. Actually, they're the opposite. They're doing almost everything the personal finance guides tell you to do. They max out the employer match. They don't carry credit card debt. They comparison shop for insurance every year. If anything, they're min-maxing experts, squeezing the most life out of every dollar they bring in. But here's what that optimization can't fix. It's built on continued employment. Stop working, either one of them, for any real length of time, and the whole structure doesn't bend. It collapses. One serious illness without enough disability coverage, one layoff that lasts longer than the emergency fund, and Renata and Josh are suddenly closer to Dana's situation from the last section than either of them would like to admit. That's the part that doesn't get said out loud enough. This tier isn't insecurity, but it isn't security either. It's optimization sitting directly on top of a paycheck that has to keep arriving on schedule, forever, for the whole thing to hold. Follow the incentive here for a second. Why does it feel like this lifestyle requires 2 full incomes, running at full speed, with no room for either one to stop? Because it does. The math was built that way. Housing costs, healthcare costs, and childcare costs have all outpaced income growth for years. So 2-income households aren't a lifestyle choice anymore in a lot of places. They're the entry fee just to sit at this table. So the honest way to describe this level isn't comfortable. It's optimized. Every dollar has a purpose, every purpose is necessary, and there's no slack built into the system on purpose. Because slack costs money too. There's one thing that actually breaks this pattern though. It's not a bigger paycheck. It's a different relationship between the money and the hours you trade for it. The Millionaire Club, $1 million to $10 million. Here's a question worth sitting with for a second. What if the thing separating comfortable from wealthy isn't a bigger salary at all? Meet Wendell Craig. He's 52, and he owns a commercial HVAC company just outside Franklin, Tennessee, a suburb south of Nashville. He didn't inherit anything. He started as a technician himself 28 years ago, running service calls in a company van that wasn't even his. Today, his house is paid off. His business is paid off. And his net worth sits right around $2.2 million, which happens to be almost exactly the median net worth of a U.S. millionaire household. Now, before you picture Wendell on a yacht somewhere, let's get the definition straight, because this is where most people get confused. Net worth is what you own minus what you owe. It's not cash sitting in a vault. For Wendell, it's home equity. It's the value of his business. It's an investment account he barely checks. And here's something that might surprise you. Roughly 1 in every 5 or 6 American households has crossed that 7-figure line. Being a millionaire in this country isn't rare anymore, it's just quiet. So if it's that common, why does it still feel like a different universe from Renata and Josh's life back in the last section? Because the money isn't doing the same job anymore. Remember how Renata and Josh's dollars all had assignments before they even landed? Mortgage, insurance, the 401k match, gone before it counted as theirs? Wendell's money finally has some slack in it. He hires a CPA instead of doing his own taxes at midnight in April. He pays a lawn service, he pays a cleaning service twice a month. None of that is about showing off. It's about buying back hours he used to spend on chores and spending them on something else instead. That's really the whole shift at this level. Money stops just covering bills and starts buying time. Step 1 was survival. Step 2 was comfort. This is step 3, and it's the first time in the entire ladder where the person actually owns some of their own hours outright. Let's talk about what that looks like in practice, because specifics matter here. Wendell bought himself a Rolex date, just 41, reference 126334, steel and white gold, fluted bezel, paid for in cash after a good year. He drives a Porsche 911 Carrera S, the current 992 generation, bought used from a dealer in Nashville. And 2 years ago, he and his wife picked up a lake house on Center Hill Lake, about an hour east of them. Not a compound, not a trophy property, a real second home they actually use most weekends. Here's the part that's easy to miss, though. Wendell still works, 5, sometimes 6 days a week, but there's a difference between working because the bills demand it and working because he wants to build something. If his business had a terrible year tomorrow, he wouldn't lose his house. That single fact changes almost everything about how a person makes decisions, doesn't it? Fear stops running the show. I want you to notice the pattern building here, because it's about to matter a lot. Level 1, money buys survival. Level 2, it buys comfort, but comfort with no room to breathe. Level 3, it finally buys time. 3 very different jobs for the same word, money. And there's one more job money can do that we haven't touched yet. It shows up at a level most people never reach. And once it does, the entire relationship between a person and their bank account changes into something almost unrecognizable. The ultra-rich, $30 million to $999 million. Try this for a second. Picture spending $1,000 every single day, no breaks, no skipped days, starting today. How long before $1 billion runs out? Sit with a guess before I tell you the real number, because it's not what most people think. Meet Priscilla Vance. She's 58, and 11 years ago, she sold a controlling stake in a software company she co-founded. Today, she lives on North Ocean Boulevard in Palm Beach, Florida, the stretch of coastline where oceanfront estates typically list anywhere from $40 million to $150 million, depending on lot size and dock access. Her net worth sits north of $30 million, which puts her in the top 0.1% of American households. That's the ultra-high net worth tier. And at this altitude, everyday life stops looking like anyone else's. Here's what changes first. Priscilla doesn't manage her own calendar anymore. She has a family office, which is really just a private team. A couple of accountants, a lawyer, an investment manager, whose entire job is making sure nothing about her financial life requires her personal attention unless a decision actually needs making. She looks at a one-page summary every so often. That's it. That's the whole interface between her and $30 million. Now let's go back to that guess I asked you to make. If Priscilla spent $1,000 every day and never stopped, $1 billion would last her right around 2,738 years. Not 3,000. Not basically forever in some vague sense. A specific number, 2,738 years of spending $1,000 daily. And she still wouldn't run out. Our brains just aren't built to hold a number like that. Mine isn't either, honestly. And I've run this calculation a dozen times. Here's where it gets strange, though. Priscilla isn't even a billionaire. She's still one whole tier below what we're about to talk about. That's how big the gap really is once you're standing this far up the ladder. Let's talk about what money looks like in her daily life, because the specifics tell you more than the balance sheet does. She carries a Hermes Birkin 30 in Togo leather, not because someone told her to, but because at this point it's just what she reaches for. She wears a Patek Philippe Nautilus, reference 5711 in stainless steel, discontinued a few years back, and now trading for well above its original retail price, because Patek simply stopped making them, and demand didn't stop with it. And when she flies anywhere, it's on a Gulfstream G650ER, a plane with enough range to fly nonstop from Palm Beach to Dubai without a fuel stop. Now, you're probably thinking that sounds like an entirely different species of human being. And in a lot of practical ways, it is. But here's the uncomfortable part worth naming directly. Priscilla built her fortune the same way Wendell built his back in the last section, just at a scale most of us will never touch. Same instincts, same discipline. The multiplier just got exponentially bigger somewhere along the way, and that's really the only difference. Follow the ladder one more time, because it's about to make its final jump. Level 1 bought survival. Level 2 bought comfort with no slack in it. Level 3 bought back hours in the day. This level buys something different again, total insulation. Weather, traffic, a bad month, a broken transmission. None of it touches Priscilla's life in any way she'd notice. But even insulation has a ceiling. There's one level above this where the money stops being about the person holding it entirely and starts being about something much bigger than any one life. Wealth that shapes humanity. $1 billion to $1 trillion and above. Somewhere in Texas, on a single Friday morning this year, one person's net worth increased by more money than most American cities are worth combined. That's not an exaggeration for effect. That actually happened. On June 12th, SpaceX went public on the NASDAQ under the ticker SPCX, opening at $150 a share. By the time trading closed that day, Elon Musk had crossed $1 trillion in net worth, becoming the first trillionaire in human history. His fortune reportedly grew by roughly $180 billion in a single trading session. Let that sit for a second. $180 billion in the time it takes most people to work one shift. Here's how his wealth breaks down now. Roughly 70% of it sits in SpaceX. About 25% sits in Tesla. The rest is spread across X, Neuralink, and The Boring Company. And Priscilla, from the last section, with her $30 million and her Palm Beach estate, she isn't even close to this tier. Nobody most of us will ever meet is close to this tier. There are currently 989 billionaires in the entire United States, holding a combined $8.4 trillion. Divide that out, and the average American billionaire is worth about $8.5 billion. Musk alone is worth more than 100 of them put together. Now here's the part of the story that actually connects back to where we started. SpaceX's primary rocket facility sits in Brownsville, Texas, in a company town called Starbase. Brownsville is one of the poorest cities in the entire country, and when SpaceX went public, something unusual happened down there. More than 4,400 SpaceX employees became millionaires overnight. Not executives, welders, machinists, launch technicians, people who'd taken below market pay for years in exchange for equity that finally paid off. Somewhere in that number is probably someone who started a lot like Dana, back in Section 1, clocking hours on an overnight shift and hoping the math would eventually work in their favor. So what does money even mean at Musk's level? Because it's clearly not comfort anymore. It's not time, and it's not insulation either. Those got solved years ago. At this altitude, money becomes a lever for moving entire systems. Selling one block of stock can shift a market. Funding one campaign can shift a policy. Building one company can shift what an entire generation believes is technologically possible. This is the level where a person stops participating in the economy and starts, in some real sense, authoring parts of it. I'm not saying that's good or bad. That's a much bigger conversation than one video can hold, and reasonable people land in very different places on it. But it is a fact worth sitting with. The same country that pays Dana $7.25 an hour for overnight warehouse work also produced the first trillionaire in human history in the same year, arguably in the same news cycle. That's the real shape of the ladder, top to bottom. Survival at the bottom, comfort with no slack right above it. Time, once you clear $1 million. Insulation, once you clear 30. And at the very top, something that isn't really about the money at all anymore. It's about the mark you leave once the money stops being the point, which raises the only question that actually matters once you've seen the whole ladder laid out like this. Not how much is enough, but what you're actually trying to buy with the money you already have. The same ladder, different rungs. Dana, Renata, and Josh Wendell, Priscilla, Musk. 5 completely different lives, and one truth running underneath all of them. Money never stops meaning something different at every level. It starts as survival. It becomes comfort with no slack in it, then time, then insulation, then, at the very top, influence over the world itself. Your confusion about your own progress was never really about effort. It was about measuring yourself against a rung you're not standing on. A few things worth carrying with you. Income and wealth are not the same conversation. Optimization isn't security. Time bought back is worth more than most purchases you'll ever make, and the latter doesn't end when the numbers stop feeling real. It just changes what the numbers are for. So here's something worth sitting with this week. Not how much you have, but which rung's problems you're actually solving for right now. That question matters more than most people admit. There's a harder one waiting, though. If money keeps changing shape as it grows, what happens to a person's character along the way? That's a different kind of ladder entirely.